Inshallah ta'ala, to finish off this lesson, I wanted to do something special. Alright, something special. It's a gift from me to you. That thing that we wanted to do, or that I wanted to do, is to play a game. Right? To play a game. We mentioned many beneficial things. Inshallah ta'ala, to explain one of the things that we mentioned, I wanted to play a game. Yeah, inshallah ta'ala, you'll see what I mean by this, okay? So that game that we are going to play is very simple. What is it? Select the object that does not belong. All right, if you guys look at the screen, select the object that does not belong. Very simple. I'm going to mention a bunch of words, items, whatever it is, and you pick the word that does not belong in the sequence. All right, a very simple concept, correct? And why am I doing this? Just for you to understand. Because likewise, brothers and sisters, a person, an individual could understand the meaning of a verse by looking at the sequence, the context. This is what I want to get to. Sometimes you might have a verse, and to understand that verse in the Quran, you look to the verse before it, and look to the verse that is after it. Alright, so I just want to emphasize this point by playing a game. Alright, inshallah ta'ala. So what is it? Dog, cat, bike, bird, elephant. Alright, dog, cat, bike, bird, and elephant. Now which word over here does not belong? Which word does not belong? Obvious. Bike. Why doesn't bike belong in this sequence? Because it's a item. The words before it and the words after it deal with animals. Or we have a dog, cat, bird, elephant, bike. It doesn't make sense. Right? So you realized and you understood that the word that does not belong here is bike. Why? From the context, from the sequence of the words. Very simple, mashallah. Another example. Oven, fridge, toaster, shovel, and blender. Alright, oven, fridge, toaster, shovel, and blender. So the word that does not belong over here, it's obvious, it's shovel. Why? Because the words before it are appliances, deal with household appliances, things that are usually found in the kitchen. Do you usually find a shovel in your kitchen? Does anybody here have a shovel in their kitchen? SubhanAllah, unless you're trying to bury somebody or trying to do something which you shouldn't be doing. But usually a person doesn't have a shovel in their kitchen. So you understood from this word, from these words, that the word that did not belong is shovel. Why? Because of the sequence of the other words before and after it. MashaAllah, inshallah. You guys are getting the idea, correct? Another example. Tylenol, pizza, biryani, chips, and kebab. Alright? Tylenol, pizza, biryani, chips, and kebab. Now what is the word that does not belong over here? What is the word that does not belong? It's obvious. Tylenol. Right? Tylenol. Because what the sequence of words, you can realize that we're talking about food. And even though Tylenol is something that you consume, but it's not a food. We're not talking about food that a person usually eats. Pizza is something that is eaten. Biryani. Those who do not know what biryani is, it's a type of dish. Pakistani people usually make it. It's a type of rice. Even though you probably might need Tylenol after you eat biryani or kebab, but that's not what we're talking about. Alright, so we have chips and then kebab. So you realize that we're talking about food. Or you realize that we're talking about food. So you recognize from this that Tylenol is the odd word. It is the word that does not belong. Alright, so I've just illustrated for you guys using 3 examples that sometimes in common sense, using your common understanding the sequence of the words, that you might realize that a word does not belong based on the context and the sequence of the words. This same thing can be applied to some verses in the Quran. Alright, and I'm going to give you an example. There might be a verse in the Quran, and you might not know that meaning, and you look to the verse before it, and you look to the verse after it to understand that meaning. Alright, and here is an example of that. Alright, so this is Surah Taha, verse 5, تنزيلا ممن خلق الأرض والسماوات العلى الرحمن على العرش استوى له ما في السماوات وما في الأرض وما بينهما وما تحت الثرى. Alright, so these are 3 verses, the 4th, the 5th, and the 6th verse of Surah Taha. Alright, and as you can see over here, I have the meanings, and I put question marks for the 5th verse, because the 5th verse is the verse that we want to analyze and the verse that we want to look at. So to understand appropriate meaning for the 5th verse, let's look to the meaning of the verse before it and the verse after it. Does that make sense? Makes sense, correct? Alright, so the meaning of the first verse, تَنْزِيلًا مِمَّنْ خَلَقَ الْأَرْضَ وَالسَّمَاوَاتِ الْعُلَى, that Allah Ta'ala is the one who created the earth and skies. Alright, تَنْزِيلًا مِمَّنْ خَلَقَ الْأَرْضَ وَالسَّمَاوَاتِ الْعُلَى. Right, the Quran has been revealed from the one who created the earth and the skies. Alright, so this is the meaning of the 4th verse. The 5th verse, we left question mark on it. We're going to leave it off for now. Alright, then we go to the 6th verse. لَهُ مَا فِي السَّمَاوَاتِ وَمَا فِي الْأَرْضِ وَمَا بَيْنَهُمَا وَمَا تَحْتَ الثَّرَى. And the meaning of this is that Allah Ta'ala is the one who owns everything that is in the sky. That Allah Ta'ala owns everything that is on the earth. He owns what is in between the earth and the sky. وَمَا تَحْتَ الثَّرَى. And Allah Ta'ala is also the owner of what is under the earth, the turab, the dirt. So Allah Ta'ala is mentioning in this verse that He owns everything. Alright, so the meaning of the 4th verse was that Allah Ta'ala created everything. The 5th verse, question mark. The 6th verse, that Allah Ta'ala is the owner of everything. Alright? Now some people, they interpret the 5th verse to mean sitting. They say that Allah Ta'ala sits on the throne or is firmly established on the throne. Now this doesn't make sense. Why doesn't it make sense? Because when you look at the sequence of the verse, you realize that Allah Ta'ala is praising Himself. Is sitting, is the attribute of sitting a praise? Of course it's not. Because we mentioned that Allah Ta'ala is the creator of everything. Allah Ta'ala, the 5th verse, we put a question mark. And on the 6th verse, we said Allah Ta'ala is the owner of everything. So in this sequence, Allah Ta'ala is praising Himself. So you think about it, creating, sitting, and owning. Does that make sense? If I were to ask you, if I were to put these words in a sequence and ask you which word does not belong, which word would you pick? Sitting. It doesn't make sense. Allah Ta'ala is praising Himself because He owns everything, because He is the creator of everything. This makes sense. This is appropriate meaning to attribute to Allah. Then He is sitting? A'udhu billah. No, of course, this doesn't make sense. And then after that, He is praising Himself that He owns everything. It doesn't make sense, right? So sitting, the attribute of sitting or being firmly established, we recognize from the context and the sequence of these verses that it's an inappropriate meaning. Okay, so what's the meaning that belongs to this appropriate here? Let's think about it. If someone says that the meaning of this verse, Ar-Rahmanu ala al-Arsh istawa, is that He is powerful. That Allah Ta'ala has power over everything. This is a good meaning, mashallah. Right, so the meanings of those verses would be that Allah Ta'ala created everything, Allah Ta'ala has power over everything, and Allah Ta'ala owns everything. Look at the sequence. You recognize that this is a meaning that is befitting, and this is a meaning that is appropriate. Right? But when someone comes and says Allah Ta'ala is the creator of everything, that Allah Ta'ala is sitting and Allah Ta'ala owns everything, it doesn't go together. Right? This is not appropriate to attribute to Allah Ta'ala. MashaAllah. So you recognize, brothers and sisters, from the example that we mentioned, that an individual can look to the sequence of verses to understand the meaning of a verse that some people might not that people misunderstood. Right? Likewise, when you mentioned the games earlier, you recognize that the meaning, that the word that did not belong was this word based on the context and the sequence. Likewise, I mean, you can do the same thing for certain verses in the Quran. Does that make sense? Look how beautiful it is, subhanAllah. Just look how beautiful it is. Right? People nowadays, they take the Quran and they attack it. They have the audacity to interpret it with meanings that are unbefitting to attribute to Allah. And when they do this, what are they doing? They're taking those verses and they're making it contradict. Or they're taking the beauty of the Arabic language out of the Quran. And this is not something, this is something that a person they can't do, right? Allah, the Quran is the most eloquent book, right? The most eloquent book is the Quran. The Arabic level, inshallah, the levels of Arabic that is in the Quran is unmatched. But when people interpret it, they take it, they put inappropriate meanings. They are contradicting and causing confusion to the Muslims, and subhanallah, things that are inappropriate to attribute to Allah Ta'ala. Barakallahu fikum, inshallah Ta'ala, you have a good day. Make dua for us. Ahsanallahu ilaykum.